this is Shelley McDaniel. I'm here today with Scrapbook Adhesives, and I am sharing a little tutorial of a recycled Keurig coffee box that I'm making into an elephant. I've shared this before a couple of years ago and had a viewer ask me to share again. So I'm going to be using the 12 by 12 adhesive sheet, a piece of gray cardstock for the front and the top of the box, and I've just traced around the box shape. As you can see, this is the very front of the box and the top, and then the flaps as well. I'm using an X-Acto knife to cut out that center part. That's where the trunk of the elephant or the flap will be. Now, I actually did this in 2 steps. You could go back and do this into 1 step by applying the adhesive sheet to the cardstock first and then tracing and trimming out. But here I'm just using the cardstock that I already have trimmed out and using it as a template to trace it onto the adhesive sheet. You will want to trace onto the yellow part of your adhesive. So again, just tracing around all of that through the center there. I'm not going to use this part of the adhesive for the trunk, so I'm just tracing around this so I can trim that part away. And as you can see, I'm just using a pair of scissors just to trim all of this around. You don't have to be too precision at this point. Once you apply this to your paper, then you can go back and really trim around any excess. Okay, and then for the center part, I'm just making a big X with my X-Acto knife. But save these pieces for for something else that you may use, or you could use it on the actual trunk flap when you get ready to adhere that piece of paper back to the flap. So now I'm just going to lay it down first and make sure everything fits, see if I need to make any adjustments. Of course, this is going to be applied to the back side of that paper, of that gray cardstock. And I'm using a picking tool just to get started. It's kind of hard sometimes to kind of peel away that yellow backing if you're not using that starting point at the very top of the paper. So I just use that picking tool to kind of get a start on peeling that backing away. And then we'll carefully peel away the yellow part. You may want to kind of gently edge, kind of work that away as you go up, as you start to cover up the cardstock and not take it all off like I did here. Just because it is like working with contact paper, it's very sticky. So you just need to be very, very careful with that. And I'm going to smooth it out. And go back with scissors and just trim off any excess overhang that I have of that adhesive. And then also find that if I use a cloth, you'll see that here in a moment, I'm using a bone folder here just to really burnish that and give it a good commitment to the paper. Just really gives a good seal of that adhesive to the paper. And then as I slowly start to remove that, it's stuck really good. Then as you can see, I'm just taking a little portion of that white backing off and then working it up to cover up the box with the paper. Okay, here I'm going to slip a mat under here and take a cloth and just kind of wipe away, just roll away that excess adhesive that may be, around the edges there. And then here I'm just going to fold these flaps back, give it a good crease. I did go ahead and cover, even though they won't be seen, I did go ahead and cover the flaps just so it would give a good transition and you don't have any loose kind of edges there hanging up. You don't have to cover them entirely, maybe just a little, just a little section of the flap. That way it's kind of tucked in up underneath the sides when you get ready to put the box back together. And here I'm just trimming away some of the excess, this top part. I ended up really not needing that. But I did want to keep a little bit of the edge there. Okay, so that part is all done. Now I'm going to go back and add the part for the trunk. This is just that part that I cut away, and I went ahead and added the some pieces of the 12x12 adhesive sheet back to that. So we'll just place that down there, and again, just carefully smooth it out as you walk the piece up and get everything really lined up really nicely. And again, you can see that I left a little bit of overhang there, so I can tuck that underneath the back paper to give a nice transition. And then here, a little bit of that red is poking out there, so I'm just going to trim that away. And then I'm also sanding the edges down. Just using a sanding block and completely sanding around that entire piece, just to give it a really nice smooth edge to that cardstock paper. I'm going to fold right there at that flap. That's his trunk. And then next I'm going to take my ruler and draw a couple of a few faint lines using a pencil, because we want to add some wrinkles to his trunk. So there I've drawn about 4 lines there, and I'm going to use, and I'm going to switch up on you here. I decided to use the 16th inch, I think that's 16th inch, hole punch for this part of it, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, I'm really not sure. And just poke holes there, punch holes there at the ends of the lines. Now, after you get this done, you can go back and erase this, but I haven't really found that it's necessary. But you can go back if you use a pencil and just erase your lines after you get through with this part. So just at the very ends of the lines. And now I'm taking some blue and white baker's twine and an embroidery needle and just going back and drawing that twine through to cover up those lines. So you will cover up the lines, so if you don't want to worry with erasing those, then you don't have to. This is very thick twine here, so it's covering that up. Okay, now I'm just going to tie the ends off, and you can make another piece if you wanted to. And on the original box that I did a couple of years ago, I did cover that up, the inside part, just to hide the inside of this, inside of the flap. Okay, now you could also ink around this if you wanted to at this point. Now the video is fixing to cut off because I wasn't aware that it had cut off for some point. But this paper I'm using here, I'm using on the sides that I'm showing that are still left in the front of the box. Just easy. I'm, again, tracing out and covering up. I'm using another sheet of 12x12. You'll see here that I actually put the paper to the adhesive first and then traced out. But that's it. And for the next part, I'm going to show you how the end result turned out. So here we go. Here's a look at the end result. For the ears, I used a 4-inch heart die and then a smaller scallop die for the middle. I used oval shapes for the eyes. And again, all the supplies are on the blog post that I'm sharing today at Scrapbook Adhesives. Thank you so much for joining.